Welcome back. Okay, let's take a look at volume of a cone. So volume of a cone is 1/3 the volume of a cylinder with the same base and height. So volume of a cone is 1/3, 1 divided by 3, times pi, times radius squared, times the height. So that is the formula for volume of a cone. So you definitely need the height, which is right here. How tall is this cone? And then the radius squared. So now just remember, if you have a line going all the way across your base, that is the diameter. So you have to take the diameter and divide it by 2, or cut the diameter in half to find the radius. Remember, 2 radius equals 1 diameter. So take the diameter and divide it by 2 if you ever have that line all the way across. Okay, so let's go back to a cone being 1/3 of the size of a cylinder with the same base and height. So take a look at these two. Notice that this cylinder and this cone has the exact same diameter all the way across and same height. So if this is a diameter of 4, remember we're going to cut that in half. We're going to divide it by 2, and so the radius is 2. So the radius is 2. Okay, so now because the base and the height are the same, then that means this cone is 1/3 of the size of this cylinder. So we have volume of a cylinder is pi times radius squared times height. And this cone is going to be 1/3 of pi times radius squared times height. So everything is the same on these two formulas, except the cone is 1/3 of the size. So that means that 3 of these cone-shaped bags can fit into one of these cylinders. We could take all this frosting and fill 3 of these cone-shaped bags because it's 1/3 of the size. Okay, so let's go back and let's practice solving using formula of a cone. The volume of a cone. Okay, so now we have this seashell, we have our height, and we have our radius, and it does say what is the volume, and it does say estimate using 22/7 for pi. So let's do that. Volume is 1/3 pi times radius squared times height. So we're going to say 1/3, and instead of using pi, they want you to use 22/7. So now think about it this way. If you take 22 and you divided it by 7, wouldn't it go in 3 times with a little left over? That's 3.14 basically. So then your radius is 8 squared, and your height is 63. So listen folks, you're going to plug all of that into your calculator at one time. 1 divided by 3 times 22 divided by 7 times 8 times 8 times 63. And it is 4,224 millimeters cubed. Cubic millimeters is volume. Okay, so let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look at this one. It says, what is the volume of the cone? Write your answer in terms of pi this time. Okay, so we have 1/3 times pi times the radius. So this is your radius. 3 squared times your height, how tall this is. So 4 here. Okay, so now, folks, you don't have to do all of this step-by-step multiplying. You can actually plug all of that into your calculator at one time. But because they brought the pi symbol down, they said use it in terms of pi, you're going to plug in everything else to multiply. So 1 divided by 3 times 3 times 3 times 4. And that would be 12 pi. Or if it didn't say answer in terms of pi, you would basically just plug all that into your calculator at one time. 1 divided by 3 times 3.14 times 3 times 3 times 4, and you would get 37.68 centimeters cubed, cubic centimeters. Okay, let's take a look at another one. So let's take a look at this next one. So what is the volume of the cone to the nearest hundredth this time? So pay attention to how they're asking you to round, okay? So again, volume is 1/3 times pi, which is 3.14, times the radius squared. So this time we're doing 16 squared, times the height, which is 36. Again, you don't need to multiply one step at a time. You can plug all of that into your calculator one time. 1 divided by 3 times 3.14 times 16 times 16 times 36, and that is 9,646.08. Hundredths place is two numbers after the decimal. Okay, so let's take a look at this bottom one, number 12 on page 435. Okay, so this says how much water, let me zoom out a tiny bit for you. So this says how much water can the tank hold? Use 3.14 for pi and round to the nearest tenths place. Okay, so notice we have 3 different measurements here. So we have the height, which is how tall is this cone, straight up and down, a straight vertical line. And then we have our radius, which is 11. And then we have this, we call this the slant height right here. We don't need the slant height. We're just going to use regular height and radius. Okay, so how much water can the tank hold? Isn't that asking how much volume this cone will hold? What can we put inside the cone, basically? So, volume of a cone, 1/3 pi times radius squared times height. Let's fill in what we have. So we have 1/3 times 3.14 times our radius, which is 11 squared, times our height, which is 60. So now plug all of that into your calculator at one time. 1 divided by 3 times 3.14 times 11 times 11 times 60. And then it does say round to the tenths place, so 1 number after the decimal. So that would be 7,598.8. And we're going to label it cubic feet. So feet cubed, cubic feet. Okay, so now that's our total volume. That's the total amount of water that we can pour into this cone. So let's look at part B. If water is drained from the tank to fill smaller tanks that each hold 500 cubic feet of water, how many smaller tanks can be filled? Okay, so folks, look, this is your total, 7,598.8. That's our total amount of water. We want to fill a bunch of little cone-shaped tanks that each hold 500 cubic feet each. So that means we're going to divide our total amount of water by 500. So plug that into your calculator and you get 15.1976. Okay, so now that's not your final answer. It says basically how many smaller tanks can be filled. So right here, your whole number. So you can fill 15 tanks and then you're going to have a little bit of water left over. So you can fill 15 total smaller tanks. And then we'll have a little bit of water left over. Okay, I hope that helps.